No matter where you are in the world, welcome to another CIRF report, this one called The Great Pivot. And by that we mean the pivot of the pendulum that's been swinging far too long from one direction. And just like anything is unsustainable when you got extremes of one side, eventually whoom, it's going to swing to the other side. And this might be close to that week. This week, we're calling it the Great Pivot. We have high correlation rate on these, the influences. We triangulate for the influence, then we triangulate for the solution or the behavior that you should consider using to maximize this energy. The energy is shifting. That's the Great Pivot. That's what I'm calling the Great Pivot. Now, here's what we have. Remember, we have Venus that has already entered into Pisces. And she's exalted, and she means peace and harmony. And so that works super well with Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. We're going to look at the historical context of the last time Jupiter and Neptune happened in a conjunction in Pisces. And I think you'll be elated what happened. Then we have maybe some other sort of pressurized alignments like Mercury square Pluto, which means that now we have our thoughts that sort of are inundated with this influence of control, whether or not we're out of control or wanting to get more control, that kind of thing. And we have some opportunities. Anyway, there's a whole lot of tropical astrology influences, including we have a full moon coming up. Then we have a new moon, which is a partial solar eclipse at the end of the month. And then two weeks after that, we have a total lunar eclipse that we all can see if you're in, well, we'll talk about that later. But North America should be very well being able to see that. And that's May 15th, the lunar eclipse. All right, Dreambot says, mind is the builder. We're going to look at that, and it's very nature-based. Getting ready, I guess, for the sun to go into Taurus in a week or two. The next CIRF report, well, at the very end of that will be this, the nature part of things. And that's about right, because the Dreambot, the collective unconscious, is about, on average, about 2 to 6 weeks, but more on the front end of that, the 2 weeks out. And so it's already seeing the emphasis more on nature, which is very much Sun in Taurus. And the I-Ching 62 says attention to detail. Yeah, that could go more for like a Virgo. It sounds sort of like a Virgo energy. But when you read this, you'll start to realize that it's more of, as an influence, is the need for the details. The details matter, and the details are coming out. And this is a very Jupiter-Neptune thing, because as we enter a time where it's very optimistic but dreamy, that's the nature of this Neptune-Jupiter, and peaceful and maybe even grandiose, excessive, overly positive. That's the tendency to get distanced from the details. So you're wanting the details. That's how this works. There's also a pressure on Mercury, and that pressure is going to feel like the need for attention. So it's more, this I-Ching is more related to knowing or realizing or perceiving the need for details, more a thirst for details. And that is very correlated with mind is the builder, because it wants to fill in the gaps. If the mind is missing some gaps, maybe on someone, some facts or something, it will tend to make up the rest. And it's going to pull, if Neptune is there, it's going to pull from Neptune. It's even going to pull, it's going to pull from any energy that's there, any influence. So very well correlated. And it's the points, all this points to one thing, where you have a shift from these details that you do get. The mind builds the rest, and it becomes a very positive flip or a shift of this pendulum. All right. I hope that makes sense. Hopefully it will make a lot more sense when we go to the daily astrology. So just hang on. And here we go with just some quick comments. All right. Thank you. Shout out for Not For Me To Say, basically just channels. If you want to go read this, I highly encourage you to, either over on Rumble, last week's report, or on YouTube. It is my prayer for all to regain what has been dividing and blocking our consciousness, dimensions, realities, and lives, so that truth is revealed and darkness is illuminated and all of our light body connections have been reclaimed. Amen. But that is just an overview of Not For Me To Say and his comments. So go back and read that. It's a really neat channeling and a good conversation between, I think it was Ravi and Not For Me To Say. Brian Adams says, one soul is enlightened. All of mankind will be enlightened. Where we go one, we go all is so true. There is no self without other. Now, both Not For Me To Say and Brian and may possibly Ravi says the storm may just be starting for those awakening. Basically, they are talking about this particular CIRF report. Pretty cool, eh? And Terry says, I have a recommendation for everyone. I personally know an expert in traditional Chinese medicine who is a serious empath. He did a Facebook session last night dealing with the effects of stress on the brain. So please grab an anatomy text and look up Keith Coley, Coley. And then a big shout out to Milos. You win this week's comment. Great job, Milos. Now, Milos and Philly 369 Garden both tied. This is so cool. We had Rumble with 5 Rumbles, the top comment over on Rumble, and the top comment on YouTube had 5 up arrows. Now, in the past, we did the tiebreaker, which is any replies. And so Milos had just barely out-edged Philly 369. So a huge shout out to Milos, but also Philly 369 says, right on for coming on to Rumble. I just got banned from YouTube with my garden channel, so easier for me to see it. I started my Rumble before they nuked me, luckily. Now, Philly, go ahead and drop your channel here on this video, and I will publicize it so that you can get some more subscribers. We want to be a part of knowing how to garden or whatever it is that you do. And also, everyone else, if you've got a YouTube channel that you want publicized, write that in a comment and I will help you publicize it, okay? All right, so shout out to all you commenters, likers, and sharers. Let's get into the Dreambot. Okay, top word, April. Okay, we're in April, no biggie. But it's like sort of a time thing. All the blue arrows basically point to nature, including the words nature and natural. And so, April is sort of natural. I mean, it is based on an astronomical event. So the planets, sun going into Aries, a speck of the sky. Some people call that astronomy. Some people call that astrology. Either way, doesn't matter. That's how we determine our seasons, which is astrology. And so I have this in segmented arrows. April is natural and time. It's sort of man-made, isn't it? But there is a milestone that is purely natural, okay, which I just mentioned. But the big news here in today's run is the red arrows. Mind is the builder. This is a Edgar Cayce quote. Mind is the builder, meaning that everything that is created originates from some mental thought. It doesn't mean necessarily that everything you think is a thing. Now, I think Edgar Cayce was sort of swaying more towards that if you're thinking it, it's more, thoughts are objects. And in maybe another realm or a mirrored layer of reality, then that is playing out. But nonetheless, in the world of psychology, there is a lot of truth to this, that nothing you do doesn't start, has a lot of negatives. How about this? The positive version is everything you do before you do it, there's a thought there. And mine is the builder. All right, let's get into the astrology, see what's there. Look at this overview. You know what I forgot to do last week is talk to you about some upcoming eclipses. And so we do. We have a partial solar eclipse coming on the 30th of April. That's in a few weeks. And in the meantime, we have a full moon. I'm pointing to it, but a full moon is around in here. Then the next CIRF report, we are going to be talking about a full moon in Libra, I believe. And then we're going to have a couple weeks later a partial solar eclipse. And then we are going to have a full moon eclipse. We'll talk about that when the time comes, but you can prepare for those. In the meantime, we have big alignments happening. We've talked about this last time. Jupiter and Neptune starting its conjunction. It goes exact on the 12th. And so if past is any sort of an indication of what happens when Jupiter and Neptune meet in Pisces, it's something having to do with peace. Furthermore, you have Venus has already transgressed into Pisces. And so Venus is exalted, meaning that she is stronger. What she does is easier. She's more profound at what she does. And if you think about Venus and the qualities of peace, harmony, maybe even beauty, but more of the connectedness aspects, the relational aspects, because Pisces is connected. We're all one is Pisces. And so we've got two huge energies that say basically the same. They support each other. Now, it's not all of this easiness. There is some hardship here as Mercury going into Taurus. That's not so hard. It's just more grounded. Mercury will go into Taurus and get grounded. But at the same time, Mercury has a square over to Pluto. So we're going to talk about what that means, sort of like an overhaul of thoughts, or it can be death and rebirth, or it can be this insistence or pressure to control everything. Meanwhile, the sun is going to start its square with Pluto, sort of the same thing. Now, this broadcast, I take a pause, is brought to you by Angela, the hypnotherapist here at Intervention. Because not for me to say, he's talking about participating in a past life regression, seem to connect the snapshots I have seen with an actual timeline life. My previous timeline self actually came into my dream world and slept on the floor of my bedroom the night after the PLR. Angela is amazing, and I would recommend the experience with her to anyone. She is the best. So the shout out here and the CIRF report here is brought to you by Angela, who is expected to get that full international certification. More than likely, this is not a promise, so maybe we'll talk about it next week too, but expected to get a full certification for her hypnotherapy. And so if you want to jump on board here, get a past life regression or a parts therapy, learn how to become whole again, or end an addiction, or learn how to lose weight, all that kind of stuff. Hypnotherapy is a magic pill, literally. So if you have a lot of anxiety, or if you have a lot of unexplained patterns in your life, get a hold of Angela by going to intervention.com. I don't quite have her webpage up and running yet, but it's coming. Just ask for Angela, okay? All right, Thursday the 7th. Let's get this highlighted again. And you can see where Jupiter and Neptune are only, about 1 degree away. Venus is about 2 degrees into Pisces and exalted and strong peace there. Both of those representing very positive, very Pisces-oriented, very connected, harmonious, optimistic for Jupiter and wise. All that stuff is in there. Venus in a financial thing could be, we're all in it together, basically, with a Pisces sort of a feel. But finance could be emotional. Doesn't necessarily have to be. This doesn't make finance if Venus represents the archetype of personal finance. It doesn't have to be positive, but it's like we're all in it together kind of a thing. So other things that we have are the sextile. You have Mercury, sextile Mars, and Saturn. This is an opportunity, because of the sextile, opportunity to think of ways to fight for humanity. It's sort of a battle for humanity, and Saturn is trying to bring hardships again, and fear and foundation, and maybe even lockdown. So that's being discussed. But it doesn't have to be that way, because Aquarius is disclosure. So we could be oriented towards that. Remember the details? Not that Aquarians are all great with details and desiring all those details, but they do matter to the Aquarian. More so as they want the details out and freely available for everybody. So that's what this opportunity is all about. Thinking about fighting for humanity in a release of information sort of a scenario, or and certainly some sort of a fight for humanity. Everyone who's fighting is saying they're fighting for humanity because it's Aquarius right now. All right, and then we have the square. This is a little bit of a pressure here. Mercury in fire in Aries, and Pluto in Capricorn, goal-oriented aspirant of transformation. That's Pluto, and inner control, subconscious control. So it was pressurized thoughts of control, or pressurized thoughts of loss of control, or noticing all the ways that you have no control, or reorienting your way of how to use your subconscious for the progression of your goals. There's a lot there, and it is a lot of pressure, but it's well balanced with the Jupiter and Neptune getting stronger and the Venus that is exalted. Now we have everything we just talked about, plus we have the Sun is also making that sextile. So this makes this opportunity even more pronounced. We have less of the alignments with the moon, so there's more attention on the square. It's getting stronger. And we have more emphasis on growth, which is the semi-sextiles, and the opportunities of the sextiles. So it's egoic and mental. So the Sun and Mercury, egoic and mental opportunity as a powerful outlet to channel control energies to fight for humanity. Whew. So I'm combining these together with Mercury as the pivot point. We're looking at the pressure point here is with Pluto and Mercury, but the outlet is a double, quadruple sextile alignment, super channel of opportunity to ultimately fight for humanity. So ultimately, even if you feel this in a negative way, this need to control, or the awareness that you have lack of control, or the fear that you lack control, that can even be channeled through your mind and communication out into fighting for a new way of stability. That's Saturn. Fighting through problems, Saturn. Even though Saturn is giving you problems, he also shows you solutions and how to get around the object or get through the object. So that's being shown to you, and it's a great outlet. So look for it. And then on Saturday, we have a T-square on Mercury, but this is more steam to fight for humanity. It's just an extra pressure, and they've got a lot of energy over here on the moon. Look at all that. 2 squares, 2 trines, 2 adjustments in conjuncts, 1 opposition. That's a lot. Every kind of emotion today, and its moon is home in Cancer, and so emotions are flying all over the place. There's areas of ease, conflict, There's a lot. But on Mercury, and the way you think, it's going to be very pressured because it's a T-square. Might even be a trap. It's easy to get trapped in your thoughts on this day. But you remember, you have this outlet where you can use that energy to fight for humanity. Even if you're not physically fighting for humanity, it's a very mental thing that you can do. Mind is the builder. Just like, not for me to say, imagining solution, imagining peace, imagining togetherness, imagining freedom, imagining disclosure. All these things matter. And then together we influence that overall, whatever you want to call it, improvement, age of Aquarius, disclosure, freedom. Sunday, the 10th, we're getting closer. We're Jupiter is a half degree from Neptune, so getting stronger. And not much else to report here. On Monday, the 11th, let me say that one more time. Everything that we talked about is still relevant. There's still sort of a pressure. There's not quite a T-square because the moon is too far for the Pluto, but through the opposition. But everything that we just mentioned throughout the week is still here, but the difference is Jupiter and Neptune are getting closer. Now by Monday, Mercury is already in Taurus, so grounded, more realistic, more fine-tuned for the sensory things. Awareness gets better. Awareness of the physical reality, your five senses improves. And this struggle, this power struggle, is just about done. We're at 3 degrees, but for Mercury, because it whips around here so fast, in no time going to be out of this square. So now it's mainly just the ego that is running with this transformation, inner power struggle, that kind of thing. There's 10 minutes away. And we get into Tuesday. This is when Neptune and Jupiter go exact. Now, what I wanted to do, I looked back in my software to see that the last time Mercury and Neptune were together exactly in Pisces was March 17th, 1856. They're very close to the Civil War, but something was happening here. And look how it's not happening exactly on March 17th. So not right exactly on the exact conjunction, but the big news was 25th February, a Congress of Paris or peace conference opens in Paris after the Crimean War. And the 30th, this is 13 days after the perfect conjunction, the Treaty of Paris, known as Treaty of Paris, is signed, ending the Crimean War. And so we're talking about peace about 8 days, so about a week before the exact conjunction, and then about 2 weeks after is this peace. So around this time, if we translate that same thing, we have signs of togetherness, peace, harmony happening, but they'll probably get more finalized, and give it a week or two of this energy, if the past is any indication of what to expect this time. Plus, I would expect this Venus thing as she progresses towards Neptune in particular. She's going to progress towards both of them. And shortly, you're going to have the exalted goddess of Venus in between Neptune and Jupiter in Pisces. And so that energy is going to be profoundly positive, peaceful, harmonious. So expect that as well. We also have growth. We have lots of growth here, 2 of them here and 2 of them here. Semi-sextiles, they represent growth. And this is a perfect time in the spring. Sun in Aries, springtime is here. The birds are chirping, the seeds are sprouting, the buds are coming out in the trees. This is exactly the metaphor for a nice, healthy spring. Meanwhile, the ego is going through a transformation of power, so death and rebirth to our sun in Aries. Okay. But so basically what I left out here is don't expect some big profound news just on Tuesday the 12th for peace breaking out. They're in the works, and that energy has to percolate according to the past. And so it might take some time to manifest that. I'm thinking that the news will be quickly coming out once Venus gets into the mix, and that would be in about a week, I think. Do you want me to check real quick? I'll do that because I'm interested. When does Venus... Because I didn't do this earlier and I should have. Venus conjoins Neptune around the end of the month, so 27th. That would be about the same amount of timing from right here, the 12th to the 27th. That's the same amount of timing as from Neptune, Jupiter in Pisces in 1856, before that perfect conjunction until the Treaty of Paris actually was signed. So about 2 weeks. Let's get back to our last day of the CIRF week, which is the 13th. Challenges with ego and the control continuum is there. It's going to be a factor in our solution. So let's go there. Take this out. So, tossing the I-Ching coins 6 times, and we get Hexagram 62, attention to detail. And remember, the title sort of sounds like a Virgo energy, and when you read through this, it doesn't really feels more like what we're going through energetically in the stars right now. Resources are meager, but who, through modesty and perseverance, eventually rise to accomplish great things. It's taking a little bit and accomplishing a lot. That's the energy. That's supportive of the great pivot that we talked about. Avoid pretentious ambitions and grandiose goals. Remember, we're into the weeds. We're into the details. We need the details. So that's not a time to be doing these big, wide, sweeping goals and ambitions. The power of the small is served by slow and steady advancement. The wise person recognizes and accepts the nature of the time. Incidentally, when we get into the solution is know your role, attend to the details, and act with humility. I know that's not the behavior, but that does direct overlap with what we will talk about. Harmonious working relationships is essential. That's important because we're doing mutual attraction for our solution. Keep group chemistry in mind. Harmonious working relationships are essential to the success of exceptional undertakings that begin with meager resources. Meager resources. Everyone talks about food shortages. We got still boats that are hanging out on the west coast of California, but modesty is key here. All right, this is not anything new that you guys don't know already, but we're getting into the solution now. We're on Hexagram 31, mutual attraction. Now, this goes beyond relationships, romantic, intimacy. Yeah, that's included in here, but let's think broader, okay? The solution is the attraction of opposites is a powerful and fundamental force, especially that of a mutual attraction in the beginning stages. In response to the magnetic attraction between two people, the masculine principle, this is thinking bigger picture now, the masculine, the yang, seizes the initiative and then submits to the feminine, that's the yin, receptive and nurturing. When the assertive is able to defer to the receptive, and when the receptive accepts responsibility and exercises its quiet leadership, an electric and profitable union is the result. This brings good fortune, for all success depends on the effects of a mutual attraction in some form or another. That's the key. In some form or another. This is not the place. We don't have the astrological layout like we did with Venus and Mars conjunct. We don't have that. So we're not looking for male and female together, but that is included in the overall spectrum of combining the opposites. The mutual attraction, what we want to do is marry up the extreme of both sides, marry those up. And it's hard to do as one person, so it needs a relationship to the other. It's easier that way. Let the power of the mutual attraction pull you along. So basically, we're going to get to this in our final slide, but you're going to assess where your extreme is. Are you extremely ideal in one way or the other? Find the opposite and marry up to it. Doesn't mean you have to get married. We're not talking about romantic relationships. We're about finding traits in others, or we can find it in a scenario or in a context out in the real world. And so you want to put yourself in those positions so you can get to the opposite. And it's not you trying to be both extremes. It's you being the extreme that you're naturally inclined to and relying on the other to be the other extreme, and then letting that attraction pull you into what to do next. I'll explain it a little bit more as we go along. First, we need to get into the rave, and I did the conversion chart where we have Jupiter and Neptune on Tuesday going exact at 23 degrees, 59 minutes in Pisces. And so we get this rare alignment where both tropical and sidereal overlap in hexagram 36 of the Rave Mandala. So we're going to use that one, gate 36, and we're going to use sidereal Pisces for our solution. 36 of the rave is the darkening of the light. It is line 2, assistance to others in times of decline, the application of imagination. Let me pause there. Do you notice that? The application of imagination is the mind as the builder, direct overlap to our dream bot. The application of imagination to schemes which benefit others, feelings that can benefit others in times of crisis. Now, on the downside, this energy has an opportunity to cause problems, and that is the more practical and individual assistance, but only when unavoidable and not as a general principle. In other words, selective assistance in times of crisis. That's the downside. That's the risk. So you don't want to be selective in your assistance. Okay? And I'm going to put all this together here on the summary slide for you. So let me get all this set up. All right, the influence is the great pivot. And I'm imagining like a swing. The swing has been going so long in one direction, it's just a matter of physics before it comes violently going the other direction. And I think this week is that either the start of the pivot, so these people are right at the climax of their swing, and then starting that forward movement to the other side is what this week represents, and is the best I can tell. So it makes it difficult to steer the ship with confidence despite all the positive things happening. By the way, so positive they seem beyond belief, and that's because I pulled from Neptune. It's hard to believe. And Neptune and Jupiter, so together, that's an optimistic, wise, philosophical imagination. Mind is the builder. We have minds are influenced to create something very positive, something better, something together, something Pisces, something connected. And Pisces is also the self-sacrificer, right? So here's the solution. So we're triangulating from Pisces. Remember, I said self-sacrificer, spiritual, compassionate, idealistic, connected. The rave, remember, said support during a cyclic decline. This is going to be a cyclic decline. Might have those, according to the rave, in times of the I-Ching, in times of modesty or low on resources. Rave Mandala says, assist others through by imagining beneficial schemes to help, avoid manipulation and selective assistance. And then the mutual attraction piece to the I-Ching says it's the opposites that you're looking for. Locate your extreme and look to marry it up with the opposite extreme. Then allow the dynamic energy of the association to pull you in the right direction. This is a direct behavior, but based on your context of how you're being pulled into this, as long as you find the extreme of the other side. All right, here's the overall triangulation. It's about being the helper this week. Get your energy topped off at the beginning to help fill your own cup before pouring your soul outward. The I-Ching is where we start. Identify your current extremes of behavior, cognition, emotional content, maybe patterned belief systems. Maybe that's an extreme. Anyway, look to temporarily marry that extreme to the opposite through relationship. Let the dynamic of said relationship guide you. From there, don't be surprised if it guides you to helping people in need, in crisis, emergency, etc. It will be a cyclic decline for numerous people. You shall not be manipulative or selective in this help. The Sidereal Pisces gives you ample compassion, imagination, empathy, transcendence to navigate this period of time. Extreme energies are expected. Extreme portal energy, that's Jupiter and Neptune with the help of Venus. Extreme peace, both of those. Extreme benevolence, equally matched with the polar opposite of extreme destruction. The Pluto is there. Pluto and mind, Pluto and ego are there. Extreme manipulation, the control grid, the Pluto energy of manipulating and to an extreme and the fear thereof. Extreme crisis and need. People need you. And reminder, no escapism. That's what Pisces tend to like to do, is their downside. Their biggest risk is just running away. I don't have to deal with it because I'm positive and I'm very spiritual. I don't deserve this. So you got to hang in there. You got to try to connect to the polar opposite and attract those energies and let that relationship guide you to your particular role in what's coming. Okay. One thing that you can do, if you can't or don't want to find others with the polar opposite extreme, or you find it way too difficult, then you can invariably do this with yourself. And it would sound like, I look to my deepest shadows, shadow work, to find my own polar opposites, because we are all whole. We all do have the yin and the yang. We all do have the extremes. But I'd rather you try to stay true to the I-Ching and to the Rave and to Pisces and see this dynamic playing out in other people, in relationships. That's going to be your biggest powerful punch and biggest guidance, is the dynamic that happens when you marry up the polar opposites and let it guide you. I never thought that I would come up with that, but that's how all this stuff triangulates and points out. I am going to be away this weekend, so I already started working on the next CIRF report, and we do have that full moon. It looks to be, have some of its challenges as well, but there is a strong, I don't want to say, because I don't have a very good memory for exactly what these energies are. So I'm just going to leave it like this. But I have a lot of the next week's good to go. It's not, I think this is the bigger of the pivot week. The next week is not so pivoting. Once we shift here, I think there is a bit of a full moon crazy sort of a thing. We have a T-square on Pluto. I do know those. So more insistence on control. But while we have a full moon in Libra, so things get really crazy, peaceful, harmonious. I know that sounds weird. But crazy is the full moon and peaceful is Libra. Balanced. Balance of power and control. I have to balance all those things out. All right. Didn't mean to confuse everybody. Let's focus on this week, 1 week at a time. Sorry for introducing more complexity into next week. Didn't mean to do that. But hope every one of you has a great week. Enjoy the pivot. And if it doesn't come, well, try to do the exercises here and see what you get out of it. Again, post your YouTube or Rumble handles down in a comment, and I'll help you out with getting some more people for you, some more subs. Thanks, everybody. Blessings. We'll see you next week.